Hi, I'm Anthony Marinelli. Today, I'm happy to show you what I discovered about this Korg 2600M. It was given to me by Korg about a month ago. They said, here, take it and mess around with it. And I did, and I decided to make a video. So I told them I was going to make a video and give you my honest opinion about it. I'm very pleased, and I did a little jam on it. I find it to be a very expressive instrument, and no problem at all working with the size. A couple things I really like about it. The envelope generators. It's very clean. Nice range, good low end. So I'm going to go into a much deeper dive and examine a few of the modules, show you the differences, and it's going to go head to head with my vintage Tonus 2600 that's appeared on a number of substantial recordings that have held up over time. I can make a couple sounds from Logan's run. That was done on this vintage 2600, and maybe we'll make the Thriller bass sound. It's just points of comparison, something familiar on the actual instrument that those sounds are made on, and we'll put this little guy to the test and see what we come up with. So let's start with a couple patches. Thriller bass, because it's kind of a well-known sound, and it was done on this ARP 2600 Tonus model. So here's what it sounded like. And now we switch to the Korg 2600M. Let's try another one. So I thought it might be fun to show you a similar sound that was used in Logan's run, and the composer was Jerry Goldsmith. It was composed in 1976. He used an ARP 2500 and this ARP 2600 that I got from Jerry right after the film. So I made it on the Korg 2600M. What should I do first? Let's do the original first. Korg 2600M. Pretty nice. One of the reasons I like it a lot on the 2600M is the reverb. It's a great reverb. It's smooth and has a nice long decay, and it's clean. Area 1, where this guy really excels, the reverberator. Let's try another one. Chase bass from Midnight Express on the 2600M. Chase bass from Midnight Express on the 2600 Tonus. Difference? Now I'd like to compare sawtooth for sawtooth. So sawtooth from the 2600 Tonus, 2600M. What do you hear? That was Tonus, M. So what I notice is that the 2600M sounds fuller. And I think the reason is that the raw sawtooth waveform sounds fuller is because there's more like low-end content because there isn't as much high-end content in the waveform. One more time, the M, the tonus. So it's going to affect how the filter reacts to the waveform when you go in there. I can always filter, because these are low-pass filters, so I can always take off the high end and enhance the fundamental. On the 2600M waveforms, I'm going to never get to that extra high sizzle. I compensate for it by running it through the preamp and bringing up some saturation, and then I can get that cracking high end, but it doesn't come straight out of the box quite as much. And so I'll show you how I compensate for that in a second, but I want to let you hear the other waveforms. So here's a sine wave. This is where it gets very interesting. That's the M, tonus. M, tonus. So what I hear is a more pure sine wave, what I think is a more accurate sine wave coming out of the 2600M. And I hear a more distorted sine wave, not as pure, coming out of the 2600 tonus. I think the M delivers more of a hooty tone, which is what I would expect from a sine wave, but you know, the anomalies that you get from these old things are what give it the character. Now let's listen to a triangle waveform, and I think you're going to discover something pretty quickly there. Listen to how much brighter the 2600 tonus is. Here's the M. Tonus. It's buzzing. The M is more pure, and I don't know which one is a more accurate triangle wave, but the M delivers one that doesn't have as much harmonic content. It might be closer to a triangle wave, but I'm going to take this into account when I'm making sounds because I'll be filtering more on the tonus. Just so you know, I'm not going through a filter or a VCA. It's going straight to the mixer. So this is just like as mainline as I can get. So now I'm going to show you pulse waves. 2600 tonus pulse wave. 2600M pulse wave. Wow. So what's happening? What's happening, I think, is that the 2600M gets skinnier at the 10% side. Now let's try it on the 90% side. Let's see if there's a difference. 2600 tonus. 2600M. Tonus. M. Some of these things you may be able to hear or you may not be able to hear because there's subtle differences, and I really wanted to point out the subtlety, because for me, making sounds, it's like the greatness doesn't lie in like the stuff that anybody could do. It lies in like the upper 5% or 10% of the things that make sounds interesting, which is all these little nuances, and I'm not sure what's going to be coming across in YouTube compression, because what you're listening to is a broadcasted sound. I can hear these very clearly here, and when I'm making sounds, I'm very tuned into these subtle variations because they affect how I adjust the envelopes and the filters. So I just want you to be aware of that. You may need headphones and you have to listen very carefully and take into account the YouTube compression. So now let's look at the filter characteristic differences between the 2600 tonus and the 2600M. I'm going to put a sawtooth from VCO2 into the filter of the tonus and then sweep the initial cutoff frequency. That's a low note. Let's see if I can get the same low note here. Same thing, same patch on the 2600M. One more time. So I'll tell you what it feels like to me. It feels like the 2600 Tonus has a smoother sweep across the spectrum from low to high, and the 2600M, I feel like there's not as much happening, and then it takes off in this small area when you get to the top. So you kind of have to adjust your sweep to move more quickly across the spectrum to get it linear. So it's just an adjustment of feel. And on this, I can linger in the lows and smoothly go through the highs. So slight curve difference there. So now let's try it with a resonance. 2600 M. A little less resonance. Nice and smooth and clean. Tonus. I have a lot to work with in the high range, like up here. M. Not quite as much to work with up there. But remember I said I can compensate for that. So what I do is take the filter, run it into the preamp, and fry it. And then, let's see, we're just running it open, so I'll be able to add a little bit here into the... You hear that crispiness? Right there. So I'm adding, hear that? On, off. Without, with. And you don't have to fry it so much. I'm at 1,000 times. You can probably do 100 times. There you go. So you can get the edge just by adding a little bit of saturation. For all I know, there's some harmonic distortion going on here too that's very similar. And the Korg is just cleaner. In a lot of ways, it's great to have it clean. You get really nice attacks that are clean. You don't get all this sort of irregularity and dirt. Please remember to like and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us. Push that button. We really do appreciate those of you that have been with us and have been enjoying the videos and commenting. I look at the comments and it means a lot to me. So thank you, all of you, for that. I think we should talk about the envelope generators because this is where it gets really interesting. These envelope generators are very unique, very good, very different. So let's start with a square wave straight to the VCA, and I'm using the ADSR envelope generator into the linear input. So don't get confused because this screws people up. There's two inputs that control the VCA, a linear input and an exponential input. I can put the ADSR envelope generator into the linear input or the exponential input. So I'm going to put it into the linear input and it's already hardwired into the exponential input. So I'm going to be able to compare the envelope generator, the same ADSR envelope generator, controlling the VCA both linearly and exponentially on both synths. So I'm going to start with the 2600M and let you hear a waveform that's short on the decay time. And it's a linear input. Now let's listen here. The envelope shape is really different. Listen to how short I can get on the M. Now what do I do on the Tonus? It's kind of scratchy and anomalies that it just kind of squishes. really short and percussive and clean. And as I increase, they're very different. Now I notice that it's very linear on the 2600M. Very smooth and linear. Listen to the 2600 Tonus. Even with these mid-range decays, they just kind of fall off. Fall off. Really smooth. So now let's take the ADSR and go into the exponential input of the VCA on the 2600M. And it should be very crisp. Almost like a click, right? Can I achieve that on the Tonus? Kind of. You hear how it's a little bit like pebbly compared to this? It's quicker. So I can definitely get more bite on the 2600M. There's no doubt. It's just when you get into the mid-range, you hear how it just falls off a cliff? And the curve's different again. It's smoother. And then just keeps going. 2600 Tonus falls off a cliff. Falls off. Falls off. 2600M continues. Now I have the decay time all the way full. Let's go all the way full. And it just dies again. So, big difference. But for really percussive, clean attacks, I mean, 2600M is the way to go. Now I'd like to show you how the AR envelope generator reacts, comparing the 2600M and the 2600 Tonus. So I'm going to patch the AR input into the exponential input of the VCA, and the same thing on the Tonus, AR into the exponential input. An AR envelope generator only gives you control of the attack and the release time. The decay and the sustain are full up. But I notice on this instrument that the attack time is much quicker on the 2600M. Give it a listen. And I'm going through the exponential input to the VCA. Listen to that, how quick that is. You hear how it slopes in on the 2600 Tonus? 2600M. Quick. 2600 Tonus. So the attack is quicker, but the release time on the 2600 Tonus is quicker than it is on the M. Okay, so I'm going to compare the release times between the 2600 Tonus and the 2600M. 2600 Tonus down low, 2600 M down low. So I hear a little bit longer release. I can't get it any shorter on the M. So you can see they're very different. Quicker attack and slower release. Slower attack, quicker release on the AR envelope generator. And now, when I bring the AR envelope generator into the linear input on the VCA, on both synths, and I crank up the release time, you're going to hear a drastic difference. Full release time on the 2600M. You can go out for a nice dinner on that one. 2600 Tonus, that's just a little snack. Not very long. Attack time on the 2600M. Attack time on the 2600 Tonus. About the same. So you can see you get a lot of nuance on the 2600M because I can get quicker attacks and longer release times. I just can't get the short release time like I can on the 2600 Tonus. I'm just going to jump to something right away, like that I love about this Korg, and it's the reverb. And I'll play you a sound here. Let me bring up the octaves a little bit. I don't even need a patch cord to do it, right? Well, we use one patch cord. We're going to patch from the VCA straight into the reverb, bring the reverb up, and let's get just a very beautiful sound. And now I'll add some straight signal. Make it shorter. Beautiful decay. Here's the reverb. With straight. And on bass tones, you get some nice bark without the reverb. Let's just dive in a little bit to show you how this synthesizer gives you a feature that the Tonus never had. I wasn't able to do that until I got this new 3620 keyboard, but it's not really part of the Tonus. And that's the ability to play two voices. So you have keyboard control voltage 1 output, which is normal to all the oscillators. So if you come out of keyboard control voltage 2, you can get oscillator, whatever oscillator you put this control voltage into, to play an upper voice. So now, when you play one note, you get unison. When you play two notes, you can get an extra voice, okay? So then, you know, what I might do is take the output of the filter and then give myself a little bit of distortion. Here's straight, little distortion. And then what I might do is, well, let's mult the signal back into the preamp, but then also give me, it gives me another line so that I can go into the reverb, get kind of guitar spring reverb effect. So here's dry, distortion, reverb, and then maybe take the sine wave from VCO2 in audio and just mangle the filter a little bit, give it some resonance. So you can get some great two-note effects. Spring. The ARP 2600, in my opinion, is the best synthesizer to learn how to synthesize, which is how to program, how to make sounds that are in your head, how to not have to take a long time and just use trial and error, like how to be able to just pull up a sound without hearing it. And then when you play a note, it's really close. And then you're going to dial in the nuances that the song needs. That's why I love the ARP 2600. And this ARP 2600 is no different. It's an ARP 2600. When I look at it, there's almost nothing different. My eye sees that there's only 3 mult holes instead of 4, but I also get an upper voice. and I get a modulation output. So I can patch, you know, a sine wave in, and I can modulate, you know, one of the waveforms. And this ring modulator is a really good VCA. It really nulls out when you're in DC. So when you have a ring modulator that's DC coupled, it will act just like a VCA. So you have a second VCA. There's no leakage. When it's in audio mode, it's a great ring modulator. The preamp compared to the 2600 Tonus is a little bit more linear, which is good in a way, because when you're in the lower distorted sounds, you can just get like a little bit more just like overdrive and add that high end that the waveforms might lack. And I use it, it's beautiful in that way. And so you're not just getting these sort of anomalies like in the 2600 Tonus, the preamp is just like out of control, which I like, but I also like having one that is in control. And when you get up into the upper range, this one will get out of control too. So you're good there. Everything else is pretty much gonna, like these, all the controller sections down here, you know, the sample and hold generator, the voltage processors, the white noise, it's identical. So I think at this price point, like I would wanna have one to just have a second 2600, or in my case, a third 2600. The idea that you can learn synthesis on something this small, it's phenomenal at this price point, and it sounds really good. As you've heard, I'm able to get very expressive sounds. So the verdict is it's a synthesizer that holds its own and definitely worth getting, and definitely I can make pretty much any sound that I can make on the 2600 Tonus on this synthesizer with a little bit of nuancing here or there. And there's some features on here like the reverb and the quick envelope generators and the smooth preamplifier and the 2-voice capability that I don't have on an original Tonus that, you know, money in the bank for me as a programmer. So I hope you enjoyed this video. These are my thoughts. They're coming from my heart, coming from having spent a month with it and messed around with the instrument, and, you know, me just wanting to make a video and just go head to head with my favorite synth of all time. So stay tuned for more videos. We'll see you soon.